Attend this time for reflection. It's been led by David Matheson, Church of Scotland, Breeder and Locum. Morning members, welcome to today's full council meeting. Can I remind members that this meeting is being recorded and will subsequently be made available for public listening. We have a range of strategic items to consider today, particularly in relation to our council's priorities of protecting the most vulnerable and giving our children and young people the very best start in life. I intend to ensure that we deal with the reports in front of us in an appropriate manner, and I look forward to constructive debate. Can I have the Sederunt apologies?
Thank you, Leader. We have apologies from Councillors Collins, Davidson, Dempster, Nicholl, Smith, Stitt and Tate, and Councillor McGregor's not present at the start of the meeting.
Okay. Do members have any declarations of interest? The minute of the meeting of 17th of December is up for approval. I'll move. Second. Item 4, which is the minute of the meeting of the 29th of February 2016. This is up for approval. I believe there's a Jim. 21.
Yeah, it's page 21, 6.7. I voted for the counter amendment as it says, but I didn't vote for the counter amendment as it says in the minutes.
No, that's accepted, and the counter amendment, it should be Councillor McComb.
Okay, with that change, I'll move. Second. Minute of the meeting of the 3rd of March, I'll move. Second. Okay, moving on to item 6, which is the Dumfries and Galloway Integration Joint Board Draft Health and Social Care Strategic Plan. The progress on new integration arrangements for health and social care in the region have been the subject of previous reports to full council, and members will recall that with NHS Dumfries and Galloway we agreed the integration scheme, and that our scheme was approved by the Scottish Government in September 2015. The new IJB established under the scheme has been leading the development of a strategic plan for the functions and resources delegated by both the NHS and this council under the scheme. The strategic plan, part 1, is included as an appendix in the report, and the key features of the plan are summarised in the report. The strategic plan is a key requirement of the new arrangements, and functions cannot be delegated to the IJB until the strategic plan is finalised. Legislative requirements have set out the process of consultation and engagement which had to be followed in preparing the plan, and this is summarised in the report. Once finalised, the IJB will issue directions to the Council and NHS to deliver the delegated services in accordance with the agreed plan. Members will be aware that the Chief Officer has implemented interim management arrangements given the vacant General Manager's post. Graham Abrines, our Head of Adult Social Work Services, will cover these duties while proposals to address the vacancy are developed. We've got Julie White and Graham here, and they're present to deal with any questions arising from the report. I'll open up the meeting to members. Ian?
Chair, I suppose I'll repeat some of the things that I said at the IGB a week or so ago in regards that I do think it is a good plan, but the only one point I'd like to raise, as I might be a member of the council rather than the IGB, is when you look at the plan and we're looking at a new way forward, a new model of care as it moves forward, there's always been a strong political will from the council in regards to day centres and how they should, how they're perceived in the wider region across Dumfries and Galloway. So I'm just wondering, how do they actually, what's their role to play within the actual strategic plan? Where are they seen? How high a level have they been considered when it comes to the strategic plan? And I suppose, I mean, that's the crux of my question, Chairman, because it's something that's been brought to my attention over the last couple of weeks, and it has been a strong political will from the Council to give them a high degree of support. We have a lot of financial benefits as well as the other obvious care benefits we have from day centres. So just in regards to that, to get an understanding, the strategic plan, we've already sat in the IGB and said I do believe it's a really good fit for purpose plan. So just when it comes to that particular point, there is a strong political will from the Council to support the day centres as they go forward. Do we feel that they're fundamental to this actual plan?
Graham?
Good morning, members. I can certainly confirm that the day centres, the 10 across the region, are seen as key players within the delivery of the plan in terms of our early engagement, prevention, early intervention. They are good resources. They are the sort of resources that we want. We want to work with them to build up what they can or cannot do. And to sort of back that up, this year we've been able to once again find the additional £108,000 on top of their core funding, so that again this year, this financial year coming, they will receive exactly the same amount of funding as they've received in the previous few years. And given the context that we're working in, I think that's a statement in itself.
Okay, Jane?
There we are. Leader, I echo the sentiments. I think this is an excellent way forward. I think an enormous amount of work's gone into it, and I fully welcome the plan here. My question is, I suppose, concerning the form and content of directions that we are going to receive from the IJB, and with respect to how we and what we do in terms of monitoring what is available and what goes in, and also actually suggesting to IJB members that they might care to consider assumptions that are made with respect to directions. My very specific question was that I noted in the second part of the strategic plan the inflationary assumptions from this on this plan. And
can you give us a page number?
No, I can't. It was mentioned as a link. But the fact is, I mean, I can simply say to members that the inflationary assumptions that were put down through the NHS side of things were considerably in more than what was suggested from the council side of things. And my concern is, do we have any locus in terms of the council in saying, hang on a wee second, those assumptions are going to require this level of direction, and how does this actually going to work? How are we going to monitor it? Do we have any locus in that, or is this absolutely to do with the IJB? Because the inflationary assumption on drug secondary care is 13%, which is very considerably more in advance of anything that we would consider is appropriate. We mentioned 2.5% for buying care packages in a footnote to say that that was really quite a large inflationary assumption. So that's really something which I'm placing in front of members, that how are we going to be sure that the assumptions that are made are reasonable?
Julie?
Thank you. I think in terms of the first point, in terms of the directions, we have now received sort of detailed guidance in terms of the issuing of directions, but from the 1st of April we've agreed that the sort of first set of directions will be fairly simplistic in terms of giving directions to the organisations to continue to deliver what they've been delivering up till now. But that as the IJB matures, then there will be further discussion about the detail of those directions moving forward. In terms of the inflationary assumptions, I think that Councillor Maitland's raised a very specific issue about the drugs inflation within the NHS. What I would say, I would start off by saying is that obviously we haven't finalised and agreed the budgets for the IJB, and that a paper will be being brought forward to May, to the May meeting of the IJB to agree to set out what that budget looks like. And Katie Lewis, the Chief Finance Officer, is working with both organisations in terms of setting out what those budgets look like. In terms of the very specific question about inflationary uplifts around drugs, the total uplift around drugs is usually a combination of projected increases in the costs of the drug, but also increase in terms of volume of drugs that we anticipate would be prescribed within the NHS locally. And a lot of the inflationary assumptions are actually agreed nationally rather than at a local level. But that is something that Katie will cover in terms of the delegated budgets, the financial arrangements within the IJB at a future date. But that is, in terms of the inflationary part of it, that's often something that is driven nationally in terms of tariffs for drugs and the cost of drugs, which isn't even necessarily a Scotland issue, but a UK issue for us.
I don't know whether that answers your question completely, or whether, you know, it's how we get a handle on it. How do we get a handle on that?
Well, I think in terms of that would be for the IJB. I think to be having a conversation around what that budget looks like, and what the assumptions have been made in terms of what the uplift needs to look like for drugs. So, as I say, Katie will bring those assumptions forward to the IJB when we are setting out what that budget looks like in May.
I think it may be helpful for members just to perhaps add to Julie's helpful comments that there's still, Jeff, Ace and myself are still accountable for the services. So therefore, we have a formal arrangement of a meeting with Julie, a tripartite meeting. But actually, we mustn't forget we're not starting from a low base. We've had the partnership. We entered into the creation of the IJB on an open and transparent, open book accounting process. And in fact, even this week, the finance officer of the IJB and Paul Garrett are meeting to go through the numbers and that assurance. That process won't stop just because we've now moved into an IJB. It would be how we communicate those discussions to the wider members, recognising the position of the IJB members to ensure that you're cited on the decision-making process of the IJB. And that's a mechanism I'll work with Julie to see how we brief members, the broader group of the 47 members, on those issues. And that's something Julie and I will be discussing, how we take that forward. The matters are for the IJB, but it's how we keep members cited on the assumptions, etc., moving forward to make sure that we keep our partnership going across the both bodies. So I will look to bring something back to the members, either through the groups or full council, explaining how we'll work that going forward.
Dennis?
Thanks, Leader. Can I start with the words that still ring in my ears from our chief executives, and that is more of the same will not do when it comes to health. We cannot afford to keep doing things the way we're doing them. Therefore, there's got to be change. To develop this has taken 8 years, and for 4 or 5 years, it really did not appear to be going very far. But we're now, I think, at the starting gate. I think we have an exciting plan here. I think we have an exceptionally good team in place to carry this forward, and I really believe Dumfries and Galloway Council needs to sign up to this today, because we do have an increasing ageing population that we need new ways of working with to deliver the services that we need. So Leader, having been involved in the process, all I can say is I believe we've got an excellent team who've worked very hard, dedicated to the process, and I hope this council will unanimously sign up to deliver this today.
Willie?
Yeah, Chairman. I'm not here to unpick the strategic plan, but there are issues in it, none more so, and I'm pleased to hear that the remarks made by the Chief Executive there in terms of how we move forward and how we are cited on this as a council. I don't think the NHS has covered itself in any glory in terms of consultation. When we look at 3.4, and in terms of what the Act Section 33 of the Act says in terms of consultation, and indeed what consultation has taken place before the actual strategic plan has been produced, then I have some serious concerns. My concerns are around so that the council in itself does not become subordinate to the NHS, where we are being told what is going to be delivered rather than being involved in the process. And indeed, when I look at that in terms of 3.5, where it refers to the 4 locality plans, and what I would hope it's going to reflect is the needs of what the people consider in the delivery of those services. So I would want assurances that we as a council do not become subordinate to the NHS, that we are partners within the IGB, and that there is indeed a greater and more focused consultation that reflects the needs of the people locally, without mentioning anything specific like Darity.
Julie?
Yeah, I think certainly in terms of the engagement exercise that we've undertaken on the strategic plan, we have undertaken hundreds of events across the whole of Dumfries and Galloway, engaging with as many members of the local community as we could, or as became involved as many as possible. Now, I think the challenge is, as we've developed our locality plans, we now have our locality structures in place, and our locality managers are now beginning to make those relationships at a locality level with the communities and involving the communities in the development of the locality plans. I think our ambition absolutely is to build on the level of engagement that's been undertaken to date, as we move forward with the delivery plans for integration, in terms of what is it that's going to look different on the ground, how do we actually deliver integration on the ground, and we would look to build on that. But I would suggest that there has been a really quite a significant degree of engagement, which is set out, it's set out in terms of the statement of consultation, in terms of the number of events, the amount of people that have contributed with comments around the strategic plan and the locality plans. And that has been a fairly wide distribution of comments right across the region. So from the far east to the far west of the region, we have received comments on both the strategic plan and the locality plans. But I would want to give Councillor Scobie assurance that we will build on that as we work forward with our locality structures, making sure that we continue that engagement at a local level.
Willie, you went back in.
Chair, I hear what Julie has said. She's sitting behind me, so I can't hear. But, it's in regard to page 360, and indeed the statement of consultation. And I think the question was asked of the Chief Executive of NHS D&G in terms of the consultation, and Jeff came back and said it wasn't so much about consultation as more about communication. Now, there's a vast difference in consultation, and indeed when we look at the strategic plan, it does lay out the national standards for community engagement. So, there is a difference between communication and consultation, and I would hope that it's on consultation, as indeed the lead up to the strategic plan was my point that I was making there, that the NHS has not covered itself in glory, in my opinion, and we need to get much sharper in terms of what the needs of the people are to deliver the services locally, as indeed is the intention and has been decreed from the Scottish Government. So that's my point, Chair.
Okay, Andy.
Thanks very much, Chair, for letting me in, Leader. I'll give an assurance here to the member there that I'm no way subordinate when I sit in the IGB. In fact, we could, and the other IGB members around the table here, will, I hope, agree with me, is the vast majority of the questioning of the officers tends to come from the council members, right, not the NHS board members, which is something I would like to see changed, to be frank, and go in with is just IGB board members. So just to get that out of the way, my understanding, I know it is it's a standalone board and it's a separate entity in its own right, but I'm actually delighted that we've actually got built into here on page 310, you know, the social committee looking at the clinical and care governance side of things, the area committees, and this is where really we drill down into the locality issues. And I look forward to seeing what the makeup and how we're going to actually let other members of the public be part of that, because we need to bring in the local GPs, for example, we need to bring in the local carers, we need to bring in the local patients or service users. How we do that is a challenge, right? But I'm looking forward to when that comes forward. And quite rightly, the IGB is scrutinised by this council. So the IGB board, this council scrutinise the board. It might seem as though there's a conflict here, but we've had this clarified time over time, is that the council members who are members of the IGB are able to be full members of both bodies and talk about the same organisation at the same time. So I'm comfortable that, you know, that we're meeting all the governance arrangements. And just to finish, I'm just going to say it again, we are not subordinate in any way to the NHS, and that myth needs to be smashed and smashed now.
I think one of the things that people have got to understand as well, you used a phrase there that stand alone. The IGB, as far as my understanding, is that you're not standalone, because you do have to take, you know, if the IGB interferes with, you know, the functions of the council is still accountable for them functions, then both the council and the health board can direct the IGB if they're interfering with these functions.
I think for clarity that we never lose our accountability for the functions that are our statutory responsibility. The IGB is delivering those functions on our behalf. If we have concerns, it's over the strategic plan, which is our route, that jointly with our health board, if we're unhappy with the strategic plan before the IGB, then that's the route we would hopefully never have to take. But actually, the key issue is just about the scrutiny and accountability and ensuring that the consultation and the future needs and met of our people. I think we mustn't start off anticipating governance issues when, in fact, the history of our area has been in partnership. And it's just how do we take forward in partnership these new and innovative ways of working that are absolutely essential. And that's why, you know, we should actually be looking to give absolute support to the frontline staff at this meeting, who are going to have an incredible challenge in meeting current demand, but trying to be innovative and creative and moving forward. So I think to echo that, we never lose our accountability for the functions, but what we have is to develop new ways of working with the IJB and frontline staff to deliver the vital services.
Okay, Ivor.
Chair, it's just a wee bit of reassurance on something that was said earlier. I take it that although they've not set their budget, the budget will be held within the 298 million that's been set aside by the two bodies to actually deliver the services. Because, you know, you could be sitting in here agreeing the council's budget, and then you could go to the IJB and take another decision there, which may affect a budget that we set here. Just, it is going to be set within the 298 million.
Sorry, the 298 million was the sort of indicative figure that was set out in the strategic plan, which is in line with looking at the services that are to be delegated. So the work that Katie Lewis is doing just now is with the finance team within the health board and the finance team within the council to identify what that budget is that's going to be delegated from both parties to the IJB for the delivery of those functions. So that will be within the budgets of each party. They will then agree what proportion of that is delegated to the IJB for the delivery of the functions. So that 298 million was an indicative figure just when we looked at what services are to be delegated, what are the budgets for those services currently, and that amounted to a total of 298 million. 228 of it, I think it is NHS, and the remainder the resources from the local authority. But the detail of that in terms of the final budget still has to be worked through, but that would be agreed from in terms of the council budget that's to be delegated would be agreed with Paul Garrett and the council.
So does that mean to say the budget we set on the 29th as a general one for this council, we have to wait until the IGB set theirs before we can set our service ones to know if the budget that they need and require to deliver the services is going to be higher than what we had allowed for?
No, because the what will happen is the council will agree the budget that they're going to delegate to the IJB rather than the IJB saying this is the budget. The council agree the budget and the IJB then delivers the services in line with that budget.
I think Ivor, where we currently sit is that in establishing the budget that we're transferring across, we based it on the level of funding that we would need to deliver our functions for the year. Moving forward, the financial framework documents, what the IJB sets out how we would deal moving forward as more of those delivery becomes more integrated. So the work that needs to be done through the year is, as we start to be more innovative or develop different ways of working, is the future, how that budget that we're delegating then gets moved, because it will not be as it currently is as we develop new models. So part of the work through the year is that financial framework for members also to be recited on of where that delegated. But the budget is delegated just now is sufficient, we believe, to deliver the functions of the council for the next 12 months.
Okay. Jan?
Thank you, Leader. I'd like to say that the engaging process was a huge success. We need to continue to go forward. I recognize all the challenges in 3.7 and 3.8 of your report. And I hope that we will support our community partners, and they should be supported and deliver the needs of the people, and making sure we are all working together to put the people center first. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody want to comment on that?
I think in terms of to give some assurance to colleagues that as we move forward again with our locality structures, absolutely our intention is to make sure that we continue that engagement with our partners in the community to make sure that we do absolutely, the whole principle of our integration agenda is about putting the individuals who are vulnerable in our community, who access our health and social care services at the centre of what we do, and we need to develop the resources within that community to best support them. So absolutely, as I said earlier, we need to build on that engagement, and I believe that our locality structures are a way that enables us to do that.
Okay, Ronnie.
Thanks, Chair. It's on page 310, and actually it's 310, and it's the last bullet point, but it says area committees will scrutinise the delivery of local plans. When we had the consultation at the area committees, one of the requests from our area committee was that members who don't sit on the IGB or would need training for that scrutiny role, because a lot of us don't have experience in the health service, so how could we scrutinise it without the appropriate training? So it's a request really to managers and the council managers, I would assume, is when will that training be delivered to members who sit on the area committees to fulfil this function?
We're working through the process just now around the training and the OD, or what we've called our OD programme, our Organisational Development Programme for the IJB members, the voting members, the non-voting members and the substitute members. So that is something that I could take away and develop for the members who sit on area committees who feel that they would require further training. We have looked at specific areas such as the detail of the strategic plan, financial arrangements. We're going to be looking at performance management, risk management, etc. So we could certainly tailor that to the needs of the area committees, and I will ask, I'll link in with the various area committees looking at what the needs are, and then we'll develop a programme to suit.
The time scale for that, Leader?
Well, the programme is up and running at the moment for the IJB members. I think in terms of the scrutiny role of the area committees, we would be probably envisaging that we would be bringing our initial reports probably midway through the financial year in terms of our performance and how things are progressing. So the timescale would have to be between sort of now and October for us to do that piece of work.
Okay, Andy.
Thanks. My original question's been asked and answered. Just picking up what Ronnie's saying there, I'm assuming we're talking about awareness training here rather than same as we do with basic child protection and stuff like that. We're not talking about going really in depth for all 47 members, but I mean it's absolutely crucial all 47 members get understanding exactly what the process is here. So would we be looking at potentially having not a cut down version, but an overview version of the training that the IGB members will make the decisions, as opposed to people who've got to scrutinise it? There's a subtle difference, isn't there?
Yeah, and I think it is about it is about information given and awareness raising in terms of what the issues are, because as Councillor has rightly said, if we're asking the area committees to undertake a scrutiny role, then there has to be that level of that sort of level playing field in terms of the degree of knowledge around the issues that they're being asked to scrutinise. So I think we would need to work out what the detail of that training programme would look like. And I agree, Councillor Ferguson, I think it certainly wouldn't be in the level of detail I think that we're undertaking for the members of the IJB as the voting members of the IJB, because that is, that's a training programme that's probably going to take us the best part of the first year of the functioning of the IJB.
Yeah, I think members do need enough information so they can make relevant scrutiny of it, and it without dumbing it down training. It's got to be relevant. Dennis?
Yeah, Leader, is there almost a way that 3 or 6 months into this, after we get this sorted and running, that we could almost have some sort of day of awareness or a seminar for both sides coming together? Because, I mean, let's face it, the council is basically faceless to most of the health board members, and the health board is faceless to the council members. It might have been nice to get everybody together and have a real awareness of where we're going and what it's about, in almost a seminar type situation.
Yeah, officers can look into that. Yep. Okay. Right. Thanks. Just one thing on the principles of integration in your plan, and that I've asked questions before regarding the buy-in, if you want, from other partners, and one of the most important ones, and it's highlighted in the plan, is GPs. And what kind of buy-in are you actually getting? Is it full buy-in? And if it isn't, what kind of impact would that have on the overall plan and the locality services if that didn't happen?
And I think in terms of the degree of engagement with our GP colleagues across the region, that's variable. What I would say is we have a real advantage in Dumfries and Galloway in that we have a lead GP identified in each of the 4 localities who is working with that locality team around the development of that plan and the engagement of general practice. And we have various pieces of work ongoing with general practice in terms of making them aware and involving them in the local developments. Because I think you're absolutely right, Leader, that the role of the GPs is absolutely central to the success of our integration agenda. So I think that there's work being undertaken again by those locality teams, which involve, the locality manager, the lead GP in the locality, the senior social work manager, the senior nurse in the locality, all coming together to look at how do they work in a more integrated way, and the engagement of practices and general practitioners in particular is a key focus of that we're working on across the region. We recognise the importance of it, but I would say probably the degree of engagement is still variable across the region, but we need to work on making sure that is consistent, because they're absolutely a crucial partner in terms of the success and the delivery of integration.
Thank you. Any other members? No? Okay, can we go to the recommendations? I think, can we get an update? The meeting has actually taken place in the Integrate Joint Board. And they agreed, so we now note 2.1 that they've agreed.
Yes, Leader, the IJB did agree the strategic plan and the various appendices.
2, can we agree part 1 of the draft strategic plan? 3, can we note the consultation and engagement? 4, can we note the details about 500 council staff and the budgets? Thank you. Thanks, Joy. And okay, if we move on to item 7, which is the progress report on the Dumfries and Galloway Children's Services Plan. The report provides members with information on the progress of the Children's Services Plan. Members will recall that we agreed this plan in March 2015, and that reflected the need to address the 5 priority recommendations from the inspection in the previous year. The report highlights the progress being made across those 5 areas and the activities and approaches that have been developed to ensure that change is sustained and that it addresses the needs of children and young people. The report also highlights the areas which have further progress to make, and we should not be complacent in this. I am determined that we ensure that progress continues for the benefit of our children and their future. We have Colin Grant here to answer any questions. Members? Willie?
Yeah, Chair, and again, we've got the report, the annual progress report, and it goes into great detail. I think I've asked Colin this in the past, and it's in relation to page 377, recommendation 2, vulnerable children, young people and families get the help they need at an early stage, and reference to GERFIC, and then on page 380, recommendation, consistently high standards of work are achieved through the implementation of effective quality assurance framework. My question is around, the interpretation of vulnerable children, and I refer to the ones that may fall below the radar in terms of that they may not suffer any physical abuse or reach the attention or the particular committees, child protection committees, etc. And it's those ones that do need, who are vulnerable. But it's that interpretation. When do we get to those children to see under GERFIC that indeed we are still delivering for vulnerable children?
Colin?
Thanks, Leader. Councillor Scobie is quite right. I think it will be an indication of the success when we reach it, when we're able to demonstrate that not only are we dealing well with and providing better for kids in the most vulnerable scenario, but in fact that we're addressing the needs of those who might be likely to reach that situation where we're able to present that. I mean, I think this is quite a high-level strategic report that gives an indication of the volume of activity and the hard work that's going on to try to rectify that which was needing to be turned around from the initial inspection. We remain very clear that there's still a long way to go, Councillor Scobie, and I think members would probably notice that our language around the fact that we're saying that we're beginning to see an impact, in the work that's set out there. I would also ask members to note that our assessment of that progress will be tested through further external scrutiny in May and through the Care Inspectorate, and we can come back to you with the outcome of that in the autumn. But coming back to the original point by Councillor Scobie, it will be in a systematic approach and prioritising right across all of our services, that we begin to see that earlier intervention. And as GIRFEC is brought in and implemented in the autumn, there's a lot of work going on in the schools in particular around the named person agenda, and in many ways a lot of the work that's going on in that area is precisely around the sort of the children in the categories that Councillor Scobie's highlighting.
Willie, you want back in?
Yeah, Chair, I'll put, I was not making this as in any way of a criticism of the report, because in working with a group in Stranraer, making a difference, my group, then I am hearing of meetings for the child's plan, and indeed more focused on assessed needs, and it really will be in terms of how we deliver on that assessed needs. And these are still vulnerable children who do fall below the radar in terms of maybe coming to the attention of the Child Protection Committee. So I'm pleased to hear what Colin has to say. I know there is a lot of good work going on at that level, and it's how do we get below that as quickly as possible, so that all the children who may fall into that category of being vulnerable, let it be through autism or whatever, that we are delivering for those children as well.
I think that's an important point, but one of the important points that came from the inspection for me is, protect the most vulnerable children. There's degrees of vulnerability in children, but protect the most vulnerable children, and that's happening now. And as Colin says, we're beginning to see evidence. It's it's longer term, but structures and processes are starting to take effect within that. So, members, can we note the Finlay?
Thank you, Chair. Just on page 358, it highlights that, beg your pardon, 385, the lack of support and development capacity could result in practitioners, especially those in universal services holding the role of named person. So it's identified a risk there. Could I ask the Director what his understanding is of the named person and the regulation sounding whether there's an opt-in or an opt-out with regards to the named person?
Okay, I think there has been some ambiguity in the media regarding this, with Nicola Sturgeon saying that it's optional, but I'll get some clarification on that. Cool.
We're working forward on the basis that is not optional at the moment. We are taking forward, still waiting further guidance from the government in terms of the final implementation agenda. What we can say is that all of our schools and all of the staff in the schools, particularly head teachers and principal teachers, pupil support, and the workers in the health board, are receiving training around the named persons agenda. What we are trying to do is work through the practicalities to try to make sure that we don't place all of or unreasonable burdens on the named person, and working closely, in particular with colleagues in social work. We're working through a priority framework to ensure that those in the greatest need still get the sort of support you would have normally expected through, for example, social work, and that those people in, for example, schools or the early years visitors are quite clear that it's a continuation in large part of the work that they already did, but in fact this helps them to do the job that they've been doing before, because there's an opportunity to bring other services together and look for further support. So we continue to work forward on the basis of our anticipation that those people who are identified as named persons in school and through health will continue to take up that role and be positive about what's achievable for the most vulnerable young people.
Okay, Ivor.
Chair, from memory, a lot of what we put in the first Children's Services Plan was to make sure that we as a council, NHS, strategic partnership, were actually getting the sort of nuts and bolts right so that everything worked. Have we actually, through this process, improved outcomes yet, or is that something that we'll see a couple of years down the line? We've done in one paragraph it says 4 significant case reviews have been completed. Have we actually improved those, the people who've been through those case reviews, have we actually improved their life? Or is it too early to actually identify that? And could some of this be maybe 20 years and before we see the positive outcomes that a lot of the input has happened?
Have you any evidence on outcomes?
I think that's a really good question that's been asked. I would hope, I certainly would hope it won't be 20 years either. We would anticipate that we'll see really quite significant improvement in outcomes in the medium term. At this stage, I would say it is too early to demonstrate clear impact, but we're beginning to see impact and some evidence. And again, I think what will be helpful is the external scrutiny we get around that, around the evidence that we have. There are certain areas where we're beginning to see that we're impacting kids' lives, and in other areas it will take quite a wee bit longer to make that big difference.
I think it might be helpful that most of those related to pre-inspection, the length of time significant case review. But I can give assurance to members that receiving reporting issues, in my view, most of the recommendations that come from it are incorporated in the current plan. There will be a couple of new ones, but those relate specifically to specific services, sometimes lie out with the region, and I'll take that forward. I think the short answer, I would say yes. I think the fundamental difference that are making a difference in outcomes is the IRD process, the initial assessment of risk when partners now attend. We make that initial assessment. So from that starting point, the outcome will be better because the partners are around the table dealing with it. The issue, the longer term issue for all children is that many of the children are already in the system and have been there for a while. So changing the outcomes for many of them is challenging, but not impossible. Where the real difference we have to make are those now coming into the system, that they get out of the system as quickly as possible. And I think that's the longer term activity we'd look to report. Part of the process that Colin's developing that will come in the next plan will be much, much smarter performance measures and outcomes for members to monitor that measure the difference and not input. And the next plan, you'll see a significant difference between what's previously been reported to members and what will be reported to members. But at this point, we're on the journey, and we're hoping that the validation from the inspection will help us frame that next work coming forward. But yes, we are making a difference. It's coming across my table, but for some of our children who have been in the system a while, it will take a longer journey for them.
Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair, and I'm pleased that the Chief Executive raised the issue about risk assessment, because I know this is a high-level report, but I just want to sort of drill down on recommendation 1, which is in the second bullet point from the bottom. The programme of risk assessment training has been maintained, 356 staff from crises you have attended so far. And you're saying it's been maintained. I'm just wondering how many staff are actually involved in this. And we talk about maintaining, we see new things coming over the horizon, new pieces of legislation, you know, the information that actually improves outcomes for children and things like as we go through the years. I'm just wondering how that's actually moving on and how many staff do we actually need to take forward with that?
Sorry, Councillor, can you tell me which bullet point you're speaking about there?
It's on page 375, the second one from the bottom.
Ah, right, okay. So, risk assessment was identified as a very significant issue where it was variable, I would say, in terms of how staff across all of the services were dealing with risk assessment. We've developed a programme of risk assessment training, as has been identified here, and we're looking to really take forward all members of staff who are likely to be involved in risk assessment. Now, you might argue that all of us are involved in risk assessment in terms of things that we might see in terms of children. But we've already ensured the Chief Executive, for example, has set out this week to try to make sure that all staff right across the Council have completed the earliest child protection training online. All staff in schools get a refresher, a significant refresher every 3 years. So at that level, in terms of that type of risk, what do you do if you've got concerns? We're covering all staff. We've then taken those staff who are more likely through, for example, the IRD process, to have to sit and work through a specific risk assessment, and all of those staff are being trained, and there's an ongoing programme in that agenda. Okay.
Andy?
Thanks, Leader. It's on the same subject, actually. It just, I think we can actually do something that actually shows the positive moves here through you, Leader. If in Appendix 2, for example, we'd had where the risk was rated at the start of the process, where we are now, and then what the target is, rather than where we are now in the target, because we don't know from this that we've actually made progress. And I think that's would be really helpful for members to understand better the process, Colin. Yep.
Take that back and make sure the next report reflects that, Councillor.
Okay, Andy. Stephen?
Thanks, Leader. I got an email the other day, and it's maybe relating to what Councillor Driver had mentioned about the child protection online training that Colin's just sort of mentioned there. I was a wee bit, I suppose what I'm really getting at is the message there seemed to be, you better do this training because the inspectors are coming, rather than this training is, by its own virtue, appropriate in terms of the culture we should be taking forward and should be done in its own right. So, you know, I was a wee bit conscious that, is this a wee bit of a tick box exercise before May? And I'm sort of hoping that it isn't. Obviously, we would expect that all staff that are required to do that sort of training would be doing that anyway, and that culture should be being encouraged. So it's really just to tease out, you know, is it like do it because they're coming, or do it because it's worth doing in its own right?
Thanks.
Can I say I very much hope it isn't, because it's what's being sought after is embedded in that culture. You know, that everything is embedded in the culture for the protection, and that includes the training aspect. But Colin?
I would concur with that. It's having for many years been involved in school inspections, it's always been clear to me that we need to be doing things for the right reasons and for young people, and not because inspections are coming through. Nonetheless, what is necessary in terms of inspection is to gather clear evidence and data for the inspectors arriving. So that's sometimes why we will mention particular deadlines, but there's no doubt it's about a culture of people right across the services and the public and yourselves and everybody who's responsible for protection of children, being absolutely clear what to do if they have any concerns whatsoever. And that is a cultural issue, which is we're not starting from scratch. Very clear that many staff have been well trained in that agenda, and what we're trying to make sure is that if there's anybody out there who's not really sure what to do and hasn't had any training, we've got at very least the basic level of training in place.
Stephen?
Thank you. Yeah, no, that's very welcome, and I think because one of the first questions in the actual test asks who is responsible for the protection of children, and the answer is everyone. So I think that's you know, that should be firmly embedded. Thank you.
That having just had a quick scan of the email, yes, the language, I didn't realise it could be read that way, but you're right. But the training's mandatory. Just to give members assurance that it's mandatory for everybody on a computer, but we have got training modules for those staff, particularly frontline staff who don't have access to computers. So it's mandatory for all staff. Time made available for those frontline staff, perhaps in roads operatives, etc., because they're equally as important as the others. So therefore, you're absolutely right. The language could have been better, and I'll take that on board. But it's absolutely mandatory for everyone in this council to ensure, because it's everybody's responsibility.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we note? Okay. Go to item 8, which is Gaelic Language Act 2005. The Language Act requires a council to submit a Gaelic language plan. Scottish Government legislation requires that we develop a plan which raises the profile of Gaelic in our region. Members are being asked to agree a local plan as set out in the appendix, which following a statutory consultation period would be submitted for final approval. The report highlights that the plan has been developed through education services, and a number of stakeholders have contributed to its development and content. I think Liz is here to answer any questions arising from the report. Members? Graham?
Thanks, Leader. well, I can't read a lot of the report, and some of it's a lot of it's in Gaelic. But I see there's less than 1,000 speakers in this region in the last census, and it was in 2011. And it says in the report as well, not many Dumfries and Galloway Council staff can speak Gaelic either. Either can I. Would it be possible to have a show of hands elected members to see how many of them can actually speak Gaelic as well? Oh, it's 0.
I'm trying to find out how to say no in Gaelic, but yeah. Colin?
Thank you, Leader. Oh, my signs just fell on the floor, maybe. Yes, I think that even having this in the council agenda is a fantastic waste of money. I see as part of this report there's only 3 people in the whole region speak it in any frequency. I think at a time when we're telling people that bus services are getting cut back, they're having to do their own weeding of things, you're driving along roads, trying to dodge potholes. I think it's an absolute waste of time and money bringing this forward. If people want to speak Gaelic, and I've got no problem with that, then they should go out and pay for their own lessons or get into community groups or whatever. But for council money, taxpayers' money to be put on this project or a plan is absolutely terrible. I think I'd like to know the Gaelic for lunacy.
Ivor?
Chair, it's more on the fact that are we putting ourselves at risk by agreeing a plan that hasn't been through the statutory consultation yet? We were told on Friday at the Strategic Partnership that councils were being taken to court because they hadn't abided by consultation. Now, if we're agreeing a plan that's still out in consultation, have we actually taken into consideration what the consultation could say? And therefore, can we agree this today, or should we actually be noting the report?
I think it's subject to statutory consultation. Is it? Colin?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. Maybe on, while I've got colleagues that could answer any specific questions on the general consultation question, I think it's a good point that's been made. It is a statutory obligation that we have a plan. It was necessary to forward the draft plan by the 28th of February. It was important that members were cited on the draft plan, and it is critical of this period of consultation. It may be helpful to suggest that following the consultation, we bring back a shorter paper, which gives you the outcome of the consultation and any recommendations to amendments that would have been made on that basis.
I think part of Ivor's point is that the consultation to be meaningful is that you don't put something in that's a plan there in front of somebody because it could be determined that you've already agreed it. So I think that's, and so I'll leave it in a thought hanging there. But Finlay?
Yeah, it's just following on Fiver. I don't understand how, if the period is between the 1st of March and the 18th of April, that we can meet the 28th of February deadline. I think this is, I would like to know how much the council have invested in putting this plan together, and if we were to act on the recommendations in the plan, if and when approved, what would be the cost implications to the council? Because it just appears that this is another example of ideological nonsense that we've been forced on by central government.
Can you, sorry, has anybody got any answers for Councillor Carson and Finance?
Yeah, the plan is cost neutral and incremental.
Thanks. Alistair?
A charche, hamige gle holichte, a yechkin amplana Gaelic and shot and Jew, which translated, Leader, is I'm very pleased to see this plan here today. By the way, the Gaelic for a madman is Amaton, so Councillor Wiper might appreciate that. I wanted to say...
Sorry, can you, I'll ask you to retract that, Councillor Wicks.
Sorry, I apologise. I wanted to say this plan was brought forward by the Labour Lib Dem executive as was in 2005, and obviously it has support from the present government. So I'm saddened to see the negative attitude from some people. It used to be the case that children would be thrashed by teachers in schools if they spoke Gaelic. And surely we have departed from the 19th century attitude of cultural vandalism. Just wanted to put that on record. It's disappointing to hear these comments.
I think one of the main things is, and Colin made a statement about it, that this is an art. We don't have a choice in it, and whether people's individual, personal have issues with it, it's something that we've got to do. We've got to put it there. And I rather like my name in Gaelic. So. Ragnar Mark Nicol. Very good. Ian?
No, the point's been made. It was the incremental and non-cost neutral status. Point's been made.
Okay, Ian?
Thank you, Leader. I utterly disagree with Councillor Wiper's statement. I am actually very pleased to see that Dumfries and Galloway will have its own Gaelic action plan in place very soon, and I hope this will go forward. Thank you.
Jane?
It's really about process, Leader, because when this started off in 2005, I seem to remember that members weren't exactly sold to the idea at that point. And I also remember that we made it very clear in our answer to the consultation that we thought it was important that all relevant dialects and languages should be recognised. And that's about Scots in particular. And that was what this council sent up a message to the government to say that that's what we thought was really important. We see now the numbers actually involved. And yeah, I have no difficulty at all with what other members have described as people wanting to learn the language, being enthusiastic and being interested. But this is very considerably more that we are being asked to do here. You're absolutely right. The Act requires us, I think, to produce a plan. What we weren't asked, and members might be interested in this, we weren't asked whether we wanted not to produce a plan, whether we wanted some level of dispensation from that. Nobody asked us that. This is growing legs and arms, and what has started off as rather a cautious testing of the water, toe in the water idea, has actually grown arms and legs, and is, dare I say it to people, it's actually not as in the warp and weft of our area as it is in other parts of the country. And for that reason, I think we slightly do ourselves down by suggesting, A, that it's incremental and cost neutral, because, frankly, it's not cost neutral. Backfilling a member of reception to go on a training programme costs money. And I think we've been busy thinking about reducing the book stock in libraries, while we think about providing for 3 or 4 people who actually speak and a level of interest in advance of this who would be interested in knowing a little bit more. So, members, you've got the chance in front of you. I think this has been put up to the board in advance of it being properly discussed, which I think is completely wrong. We've got the plan here. There are things which we could take out of it. I would suggest, though, Leader, that we allow people to consult on this as it is. But before we do that, I think we should take out the things which are going to cost us and which we don't want to do, and which arguably impose upon us, it's like tartan and shortbread for this part of the world. It's not actually right in what we are. And I don't know what members want to do about it, but I think there are certain things here which we ought not do. We shouldn't have an introduction in the telephone. because that costs the public. When they lift up the telephone, receive a greeting, they start to pay. I think that's absolutely scandalous. We should expect the public to pay. I don't think we should have a disclaimer on the end of Gaelic, of welcomes on automated systems, and we shouldn't have a Gaelic disclaimer to an email because that costs. I would suggest that we have to be very specific about what constitutes demand for signs, if we're changing signs, because that will cost money, double the size of a sign. I'm sorry, I think members should actually probably put this out and say that we're not going to accept this in this form at all, and it can come back later on, and we will actually, once we've discussed it and looked at it, and maybe come to some arrangement through the groups as to what we do think is acceptable, and then it can go out. At this stage, I think members feel, and I might be wrong, but I think members feel uncomfortable that this is actually not reflective of what the people in Dumfries and Galloway would probably be really expecting us to spend our money on at this point.
Okay, thank you. Thanks. I think part of the responsibilities that the council will have is to raise its status and its profile. So I don't know how you can do that without, with without some of the things that are actually in the report. And we have to create practical opportunities. But it's so. I hear what you're saying, and we'll come back to that later. Andy.
Beggars belief, in actual fact, if you really want to go back and read the history books, but I'm just going to suggest here, before people come up with statements, read the papers. It was 2005, right? It was, and it went through Scottish Parliament. We are where we are. It has to be done, right? Because we've not been complying. The question might be is why is it taking so long to comply, rather than why are we complying?
Alistair Garris. Oh, there is. Sorry, Alistair, I didn't see you.
Thanks, Leader. I would go back to paragraph 3.1 of the report, that the Act was passed by the Scottish Parliament with a view to securing the status of the Gaelic language as an official language of Scotland, commanding equal respect to the English language. And as far as I'm concerned, so that is a perfectly legitimate, not to say laudable, aspiration. In my view, unfortunately, it does not go far enough, because I think that the one other language that immediately comes to mind, the Scots language, as far as I'm concerned, should be afforded equal status and equal privilege. There is no argument about that, in my view. But I'll tell you what, Leader, if we go, in fact, to the appendix, and we're talking about various possible future actions, I notice at page 445, we're talking, as has already been mentioned, we will introduce Gaelic welcomes on automated systems or answering machines in relation to telephones, etc. Can I make a plea, Leader, as a Lowland Scot and someone who's extremely interested in the Scots language, that at the same time we can perhaps get a proper voice recognition system operating in the council that seems to recognise Lowland Scots and Scots language. Because if my experience is anything to go by, and the experience of colleagues, it's singularly and lamentably failing in that regard. I hope I haven't trivialised what is essentially an underlying serious issue. Thank you.
I think that's a relevant point. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'm not going to repeat the fact that it was passed in 2005. But for the individual councillor to talk about ideologically driven central government, considering what's happening with some of the most vulnerable members of our society and what the UK government is actually doing to them and proposing to do, is a bit rich.
No, there's... Graham?
Thanks, Leader. Thanks for letting me back in again anyway, obviously. I agree a lot with what Councillor Maitland was saying about the signage in Dumfries and Galloway and how much it would cost, and obviously the cost implications to plaster this Gaelic language across some of the signs across the region. I also agree, I know Councillor Wiper has come away with some comments that people are thinking about. A lot of people don't want to say these things, but he's absolutely right what he's saying there about it, about the Gaelic language. I was born in Scotland, I'm Scottish, but I'm British, and I'm proud to speak Scots, so I don't see why we need to have this integrated into our society in this region.
It's happening. Ian Blake.
Thank you, Leader. It's been interesting listening to the various comments, but I think I have to agree that since this was brought forward in 2005, we are faced with what we're faced with. What I would like to do is to try and alleviate the concerns of Councillor Hislop, where I agree that it would be difficult to approve a plan that's still to go out or is in the process of being in consultation, and it's with recommendation 2.5. I would just simply add that to agree the draft action plan and note that it's subject to consultation and it be brought back for final approval before submitting for the final submission.
I don't think that actually answers the question that the concerns that Ivor has, because if you do put it out again, you know, you're putting something out that could be a predetermination, and with the new ways if you look at consultation, people have been challenged on that. So it's got to be meaningful and consultation, but if you're putting something in front of somebody that's like a fait accompli, then that could be challenged.
If I could come back in, Leader, it'd be difficult for us to put a document out to consultation that we hadn't agreed. It'd be going back to what Councillor Maitland said, that really in that case we should go through it line by line and take out what we don't want.
You could put out a document for consultation without any agreement. Yep. But anyway, we'll come back to that, I think. We've got Jim.
Couple of points, Leader. We are asked to agree this plan under 2.5, but the plan has not completed its consultation phase. Surely it would be sensible to wait until the consultation is over before it is agreed.
Okay, we'll come back to that. Peter?
Exactly my point that I was going to raise. And if Councillor Maitland was suggesting a motion not to approve today, I would second it.
Gail?
I think most of the points have been covered. As people know, I'm very into language and learning of language and promoting cultural history, and I think the principle is a good idea, but I don't think it fits what we need in our region at the moment. And my big concern is still the resourcing. It does say quite specifically on page 455 that it will be met within resourcing budgets that are existing in the council. We've just cut money to musical choirs across the region, and it doesn't square with me that we're doing that without knowing what this is going to cost. So if we don't defer this paper, I'm not comfortable to agree it without knowing the full costings of what this plan's going to be.
Okay, I'm taking two more speakers and then I'm going to try and find some way to deal with this. Patsy?
Thank you. I was just wanting to actually have this whole thing deferred. I've just never seen anything so ridiculous in my life. But what I want to know is, with the statutory consultation, I mean, who is being consulted? Because I don't think the community councils have I don't think they've brought it up at any meetings in this month. They may do it next month, I don't know. But I just wonder, you know, they are statutory consultees, and I wonder if they've been asked and what they've been asked and what questions are they being asked. And we've never been consulted ourselves on this plan, really. It's just been put in front of us, a bit of a fait accompli that we've got to do it because it's an act, but it's how we do it and what we do, which is what part of the act we take forward, which is best for our region. And our region, if you look at the pie charts with the on page starting at page 457, you know, with the staff Gaelic, I don't know what it is, language survey, there's so few people doing it that actually, is this good use of our time we're spending here today, this report that's been put in front of us? I think we just have to get realistic about what Dumfries and Galloway needs with regards this language implementation. I'd rather see a little bit more French, Spanish, Portuguese, Polish, all of that, rather, or violin learning, or oboes,
Sorry,
or whatever.
sorry, members, can you keep the noise down a bit, please?
Thank
I'm
you,
listening
thank
to you.
Thank you, Leader. It takes me back.
But at least I'm trying to listen, Patsy.
Anyway, I rest my case, and I fully support Councillor Maitland on her views on this, and I just think this whole thing should be deferred, and I do think we should do proper public consultation on this, and not just a stab at it.
Right, Tom, last speaker.
Yep. I don't know why everybody's getting so excited about this, quite frankly. What you're being asked there in the recommendations is quite clear, quite simple. If people don't like what's in that appendix, you get to consultation, we come back here in June, pay cognizance or don't pay cognizance to consultation, then you take out the bits you don't like having all these road signs, having things on the phone, etc. If you're going to get to meaningful consultation, send this document out. And then once you've had that consultation, then you take out what you don't want. And that's easy. We just accept the recommendations. I think we're getting into a great tizzy here, but next to nothing, quite frankly.
Right, I don't know, I'll try and draw something together here, but there are genuine concerns about the consultation, about which comes first. But we've got to put something out to consultation, and this, sorry? It's out. Right, so that plan's out. Oh, sorry, the plan's out there. Unlucky. No. Colin?
Thanks, Leader. Obviously, officers have listened with a great degree of interest to the debate among councillors as we attempt to take our part of this forward. Just a few points of clarification. One around Scots language. The members might be aware of the 1+2 agenda in terms of schools and trying to make sure that our young people learn more than one additional language by 2020. One of the options out in clusters is actually to pick up in Scots language or Gaelic or any other language. So that would be of interest, I think, to members. Secondly, there has been extensive consultation and engagement around the development of the proposed draft. The plan is a draft plan and it is out for consultation. It's on the website, it will be in the libraries and in other places. What I would suggest, having listened to the degree of debate, that perhaps 2.5 might say that members note the Dumfries and Galloway draft action plan and agree to receive a further report outlining the outcome of consultation for final agreement in June. And that would allow you to look at the detail in that and make some decisions within.
I think there is a motion on the table, isn't there? Is it? Peter?
Sorry, just on clarification, if you're going to alter 2.5, you're going to have to alter 2.1 as well.
Rona, do you want to, with adjusting 2.1 and 2.5, can you?
We have a suggestion to change the recommendations. 2.1 will simply be just to note the Dumfries and Galloway Gaelic Action Plan. That is it's a draft action plan that is being consulted on, and at 2.5 the change will be note the Dumfries and Galloway Gaelic draft action plan and agree to receive the final plan at the June meeting following the end of the statutory consultation period.
Party.
For clarification, at 2.3, it says note the plan. Is that really should be a draft plan that's gone up? And did it go up as a draft plan, or did it go up as an actual plan?
It does say in its current form, so that's a draft.
So doesn't say draft in the.
I know, we'll add draft in there. Current draft plan.
But if it's a.
With them changes, can we agree? Okay, thanks. If we go to item 9, which is scheme of administration delegation to committees, the report asks members to consider recommendations from the review of schemes subcommittee in relation to amendments. The report asks members to consider recommendations from the review of schemes subcommittee in relation to amendments to the scheme of administration and delegation to committees. The amendments to the scheme reflect the deliberations and decisions of the subcommittee and address the remit given by full council. This represents a significant step forward in aligning the delegations and business of council committees with the changes we have agreed in the organisation of functioning services and to support good governance standards. Members are being asked to approve the revised scheme of administration and delegation to committees, reflecting on the decisions of the review schemes of subcommittee. Rona and Claire are here to clarify any issues and answer any questions. Members? Ian?
Thanks, Leader. I mean, in general terms, there was a lot of debate had at the scheme of delegation subcommittee, and this is a good report certainly in front of us, but it's still it's a couple of small points in regards to what I think could be added, and it would make a big difference to the council. I think it's page 498 or page 34 on the actual appendix. The Harbour Subcommittee is there, Chairman. I think the remit of the Harbour Subcommittee should be slightly widened and to include the harbours that the council actually owns, rather than just the first bullet point. It's here, duty holder in accordance with the Port Marine Safety Code. I think it should actually add that we should have so there's a delegation, and to put that into context, if there was something that came up in regards to the ones, there's 5 in particular that aren't actually mentioned there. It's mentioned further somewhere else within the appendix, but the 5 referenced to would miss out the ones that the council owns as well. Now, as it stands, to put that into context, Chairman, if there was an issue with the ones that the council owned, it'd have to go to the parent committee rather than the subcommittee, and I think it's only right that it should go to the subcommittee. There will be a degree of expertise formed, like we have with LRB, deployment appeals and so on and so forth. When it comes to harbours, I would imagine there'll be an level expertise gained within members when it comes to that, so I would certainly move that in regards to that remit should be widened to include harbours that the council actually owns. When it comes to, I'm trying to find the page, I do feel as well of when it comes to procurement and commissioning, that we should have it's not actually mentioned, it's not in there, we should have a standalone, going back to February, a standalone committee or a committee rather than a forum. Go back to February 2015, the council did agree at that point they would put a forum stroke committee into place for procurement. That's never ever been adhered to, that decision. So I would like to, as we move forward here today, that there's £181 million worth of business goes through the procurement in Dumfries and Galloway Council. The scrutiny performance went around, I think it was half a dozen local authorities across Dumfries and Galloway, and one of the key principles that we found, the key factors to make improvements was to have a standalone committee for procurement. It made all the difference. Now I think it should contain procurement, contracts management, commission and delivering, and that's as wide a remit as what it really needs. I have mentioned in the past in regards to Enterprise Council, but I think it's maybe appropriate that should be left as standalone as reflected within the appendix. So that's the 2 points, Leader, I'd like to really hit as hard as I can today and hear what maybe the governance officer is saying in regards to that. But I think the harbour should include the ones that we own, with some really contentious issues around about Annan at the moment, and it would be ideal for this level of expertise, this subcommittee, to look at them and take it forward. Other than that, we have to raise it and take it through the agenda items on the EI committee, which I think is inappropriate. There's a simple answer to that. And procurement, just going back to that one point, £181 million a year, level of expertise within the membership. We will see benefits in regards to savings if we treat that the way that we needs to receive the credence and the level of importance from this council, what it actually needs. So that's the 2 points, Leader. I'll move them at that.
Okay. I'll get somebody. Was there anybody else in the subcommittee that had any views on this? Tom?
Yeah, I mean, Ian raised this at subcommittee. We discussed it there, both points there, and there was no agreement. That's why it's not contained in the recommendations from the report. And I would suggest it would be inappropriate to discuss this today. There's information here. We're talking about statutory duties this council has towards harbours, not other issues that are unconnected with statutory duties. And again, another issue of procurement, that there's certain legal aspects there that were discussed as well. And what I'd suggest is, if Councillor Carruthers isn't happy with the decision of the subcommittee, then he should put a motion forward to this council where the appropriate information can be made available to every other member. There's no point trying to debate something today when the appropriate information is not before members. And these are two pretty contentious issues, I can assure you, and members should have the fullest information before them, not just doing things in a whim today.
Ian? Ivor?
Chair, both these items were discussed at the relevant subcommittee, and there were reasons given at the time. The members of the subcommittee adopted the reasons that were given, that they should be included as they are today. If we take the procurement one, my recollection was, and it was raised at the last Scrutiny and Performance Committee, was the fact that it said, yes, there was a forum, and it gave an example of a forum being a subcommittee. It did not specify, and it was sent to the review of schemes of delegation to actually identify which committee it should be. And at that committee, it was agreed by the majority of the members that it should go to corporate policy. Now, that's what's included in here. I have no issue with the recommendations today and the delegations as defined in the appendix.
Alistair?
I would agree entirely with the points put forward by Councillor McCaughrey and Hislop, Leader, as a member of that subcommittee. These arguments were canvassed on the day, and the decision was taken as is detailed in the papers before us.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I'll comment it for the other side. Being a member of EEI, as far as I'm aware, the Harbour Subcommittee is being set up because at the minute the whole of EEI are officially the duty holders and have specific duties under the Port Marine Safety Code, not responsibilities to every harbour that we own. It's to certain harbours where the Port Marine Safety Code actually relates to, and that's why they are the only ones that's in there, because we have specific duties as a duty holder for those ones.
Jill?
Thank you, Leader. I think the point's probably already been made, but I do believe that there was a proposal put forward to a previous full council meeting to do with possible forums or subcommittees. It did not specifically stipulate that we needed to have a subcommittee for procurement, and that was a full council decision. It was asked to go to the Scheme of Delegations Committee. They've made a decision. I don't think that we can unpick that decision today.
Dick?
Thanks, Chair. I suppose it's just on the harbours. As long as there's a place for the harbours to be discussed, we own the harbour, Annan. What committee would reports on that go to? So I just need clarification. As long as there's a way of doing that, that's fine with me. But there's got to be a clear scheme for it. And also, yeah, the Scrutiny Committee did discuss a dedicated forum which it wanted for commissioning, and I think the Scrutiny Committee did favour a standalone subcommittee rather than being policy. So I would support Councillor Crothers on that one.
Right, I think it's EEI. I think Jim clarified that position there. Jim.
Yeah, as far as I'm aware, anything to do with harbours, because it's actually part of our remit is actually the repair or anything to do with harbours. The subcommittee is just, by the look of it, and quite rightly, is going to make less members of the EEI actually responsible as duty holders, because at the minute, the whole of the EEI committee is responsible as duty holders under the law.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Ian?
Thanks, Leah. Just to come back, I did say, did go back to February last year, and the council did make a clear decision at that point. That still hasn't been adhered to, and that was in regards to a forum stroke committee. And I would formally move that the Harbour Subcommittee's remit is widened to take in harbours, take on issues at harbours that the council actually owns, and that I would formally move as well. And as part of that motion is that we do have a standalone subcommittee that looks after procurement, contracts management, commission and delivery.
Do we have a seconder? Richard? Ivor?
Chair, I would move that we adopt the recommendations as in the appendix. Last year, full council agreed that we put the procurement one especially to the review of schemes to see where the best delegation would be. It was a forum. A forum could be a committee, a subcommittee, a working group. It came back that it would be a committee of this council that would look into it. And the harbour one, my understanding, the reason that came to the review of schemes was, as Councillor McClung said, it was specifically asked for by EE&I to address the statutory duties that we have. So I would say what we've done as a committee through the review of schemes and presented today for your approval is what should go ahead. So I would move the recommendation that we agree the appendix.
You have a seconder? Right, can we go to the vote?
Is it competent? Because Chair, because it has been a full council decision.
Sorry?
I'm picking something. Is Councillor Carruthers' motion competent?
I'll accept the motion.
Okay. The motion is to revise the appendix so that Harbours subcommittee rather, no longer just considers those harbours for which that we run and we have a duty towards in terms of the Marine Code, but we also include those harbours that the council owns. Secondly,
do we have enough information? Do you know, I mean, to provide that information? The reason why I'm asking is that we had a informal meeting with Annan Harbour Action Group just a couple of weeks back, and the recommended course that suggested was that rather than to try to change this at full council, that anything to do with Annan Harbour should actually be directed through the appropriate service committee. So, as other members have said, I'm a little bit concerned that we're trying to change something. We haven't got the fullest of information.
I feel myself I've got enough information to make a decision on. Okay. Right, can we go to the vote?
apologies. And the second part of the motion is that we should have a standalone subcommittee for procurement, commissioning and contracts management. Okay, we're clear on the motion, and the amendment is to move the recommendation as per the report. Okay. Leader.
Amendment.
Deputy Leader.
Amendment.
Councillor Bell.
Motion.
Councillor Blake.
Amendment.
Councillor Brodie.
Motion.
Councillor Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Karen Carruthers.
Motion.
Councillor Carson.
Amendment.
Councillor Dick.
Amendment.
Councillor Diggle. Councillor Dryborough.
Amendment.
Councillor Dykes.
Abstain.
Councillor Ferguson.
Amendment.
Councillor Foster.
Amendment.
Councillor Geddes.
Amendment.
Councillor Gilroy. Councillor Groom.
Motion.
Councillor Yen.
Motion.
Councillor Hislop. Councillor Lever. Councillor McCaughtrey.
Amendment.
Councillor McClung.
Amendment.
Councillor McComb.
Amendment.
Councillor McCutcheon.
Amendment.
Councillor McGregor.
Abstain.
Councillor McKee.
Amendment.
Councillor Maitland.
Amendment.
Councillor Mail.
Amendment.
Councillor Marshall.
Amendment.
Councillor Martin.
Amendment.
Councillor Ogilvie.
Abstain.
Councillor Peacock.
Amendment.
Councillor Prentice.
Amendment.
Councillor Scobie.
Amendment.
Councillor Syme.
Amendment.
Councillor Thompson.
Amendment.
Councillor Tuckfield.
Motion.
Councillor Witts.
Amendment.
Councillor Wood.
Abstain.
Councillor Wiper.
Abstain.
Has everyone voted? The amendment is carried by 26 votes to 8 with 6 abstentions.
Okay, moving on to item 10, which is disclosure information to elected members. This report provides information in response to members' requests to the Chief Executive to clarify members' rights of access to information. Of particular interest are the necessary safeguards for both members and individuals we represent regarding the need for mandate for the release of sensitive personal data. Rona is available here to clarify any issues or answer any questions members may have. Members? Archie?
Thanks very much, Chair. I think this clarifies a lot of issues for me, and I think it's a well-written piece of report to come before members. And I think particularly in 3.4, where a member can be given information which is confidential, commercially sensitive, provided there is a genuine and particular reason, that is clear and concise to me. And I want to thank the officer for bringing this forward. And I'd be quite happy to move the recommendations at this early stage.
Ian?
Thanks, Leader. I mean, I suppose before I make full comment, I'd just like to, if we could ask the report author just to say a few words in regards to this, because when I look at it, first thing that came out of my mind when I read it was gagging order. Why on earth would we be signing up to something like this? But it's, I think there's maybe more behind this, but I do think that councillors, if we sign up to this today as it is, as per the recommendations, we're putting restrictions on ourselves that it would certainly live to regret at a later point in time in the future for us and the next councils that come along. So I wonder
sorry, have you got any particular questions?
Yes, just the question, ultimately the question I asked was, could I ask Rona to say a few words in regards to this? Just in
that isn't a
outlining
question, that's a request.
the level of information that members with their rights and so on and so forth. It's there, but I think it needs to be expanded on.
Yes, I'll ask again, is there any particular questions you like on that, apart from your request?
I'll be absolutely clear then, what the information that I'm looking for that I didn't see within this report is exactly the information that members are entitled to, their rights, and why are we setting up a procedure that looks on the face of it like a blocking mechanism.
Okay, could you answer that question? Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Leader. Yes, if I can be quite clear, my intention in writing this report was not to put barriers in your way. It was very much more of a step towards having the transparent council that we had promised. And this is simply to lay out what the current situation, what the law is about general information, to try and say concisely what the principles that will be applied to giving you that information when it's requested, and also to give you a way of having that adjudicated when it's refused, because I think there are situations where it is refused. So this was to give you that option when you were being refused information. It sets out the rules about personal information, and in terms of the sensitive personal information, it was an attempt to try and find a way through the legislation as well as the guidance that had been given to the Chief Social Work Officer.
Jane?
Leader, my question is just about the wording of 2.1. Just doesn't absolutely make sense to me. I think there must be something missing.
It's perhaps just been picked up in the typing. I really should just say it was about note their entitlement to information, including personal and sensitive information. I think if you take out the words whether general, it makes more sense.
Yen first.
Thank you, Leader. I'd just like to ask Rona, would this be the same kind of level of access to information to the members of the Scottish Parliament?
Scottish Parliament members are not entitled to the same information about council business as members are. There will be times when they will be entitled to information, and that's clearly set out as well in statute. They have a right to information when they are acting on behalf of constituents, and they're also entitled to request sensitive personal data when they're acting for their constituents, but we would be applying the requirement for a mandate to them as well.
Andy?
Thanks, Leader. I'm just wondering here if we're going to actually have a standard mandate form usable right across the council, because this is aimed primarily at social work, but there are other areas where we act on behalf of constituents where we need to get some sort of written mandate. And it'd be really helpful, I would think, if we had just one mandate form that we then fill in accordingly and get the people to sign. We'd get a standardised approach then, rather than sort of piecemeal the way we have just now.
Absolutely agree. I think at 314 I said that if these were agreed, then I would ask legal services to prepare you with style mandates and letters. It may not be one that could quite apply, but we'll certainly give you 2 or 3 that might cover all circumstances in all departments.
Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. I think I know the answer to this question before I ask it, but I actually want it out in the public. 3.3 says a member does not have the right to examine documents out of curiosity. Now, at the minute, we have documents from past committees are actually up on the agenda, but they only go so far back. However, there are in the possession of officers documents that were at the time public documents, i.e. old reports that aren't on the agenda. I take it they are not covered by this, because if you wanted to do so, you could actually read that examined documents as meaning you're not getting access to old committee papers.
I wouldn't consider that committee paper that had been in the public domain would be subject to this.
Okay, can we move to the recommendations? Oh, sorry, Wally. Sorry.
Sit to the wrong side of man either. No, I welcome this report and I've waited for it for a considerable time, Chair. I think the issues are here, and to pick up on what Jim was saying there, and anything is, members' right to know, provided you can demonstrate the need on that, and it's not just to go in and look at files and so forth. In 313, I think there's an important part here. Guidance does not carry the same weight as legislation. And in my opinion, what would have been helpful is if this also included, we've got the guidance and release of personal information for elected members from the SSC or whatever, or Social Work Scotland, but we don't have the actual order as is laid out. And what would be helpful if members were circulated with that 2002 order, where it makes it implicit and explicit in terms of a person coming through the door and seeking a member's assistance on whatever the issue is. It is across the board. It's not just in social work, it's in education, it's in any department where the member has a right to information and they can demonstrate a need. What concerns me is that the 2.2, and if we could have clarification on that one, agree that there should be a formal process for adjudicating whether the member has a right to information. If we could have some clarification of what that actually means in practice. Because as it says in the order, the 2002 order, a member has a right and a need to know in terms of carrying out his and her duties. And that is clear in the order. And as I say, it would be helpful if we could circulate that to all 47 members so that they know what the order said in 2002.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, in the background papers, I have provided an electronic link to that. The reason I didn't copy it was it was actually subject to Crown copyright, so I didn't think it appropriate that I should have photocopied and put in the papers. So you've got your link to that. In terms of the adjudication process, we will shortly be updating the members' code and other documents, so we'll ensure that any process that will be involved in that will be updated in that code.
Peter?
Thanks, Leader. Under 3.3 on page 507, it says, if there is any dispute, it is proposed that there should be an adjudication process whereby the director or member can ask the monitoring officer to decide whether or not the member has demonstrated a justifiable need to know. Firstly, who is the monitoring officer? And secondly, would there be any appeal process if the director or member disagreed with that monitoring officer?
Thank you. I am the monitoring officer. We'll shortly be putting in arrangements for deputy monitoring officers. So if it were a decision that the monitoring officer, i.e. I had made about any of my service paper, I wouldn't deal with that. One of the deputies would, because it might be a conflict of interest, but there would be no appeal after a decision either by the monitoring officer or the deputy monitoring officer.
Okay. Can we go to the recommendations? Can we note 2.1, agree 2.2 and agree 2.3? Okay.
Leader, I had my hand up long before he started reading that out there.
Yeah.
But
Going on to item 11, amendments to the scheme for the establishment of community councils in Dumfries and Galloway, report by Director Communities. This report asks members to consider and agree amendments to the scheme for the establishment of community councils. Colin Holmes is here to clarify any issues or answer any questions. Members? Colin, do you want to say something? Yeah.
Thank you, Leader. It's for happy to take any questions as the Leader has indicated. If I could just highlight one specific issue in light of information which has just come to light, the proposed changes to the boundary maps, which is a first recommendation, cannot be considered today. Should members agree that recommendation 2.3 to review the scheme, then these changes will be included in the public consultation, which will subsequently be undertaken. But happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Jane?
Thank you, Leader. Just what are the implications in paragraph 3.5 about the community councils who didn't adopt their constitution within the period specified being consultees as opposed to statutory consultees? Could you spell that out, please, for me?
As things stand, the status of community councils which did not adopt their constitutions within the three-month window that's stated within the current scheme of establishment is under question. As it states in the report, we've sought legal advice on that specific issue, but as a precaution, they would be treated as consultees rather than statutory consultees, which I think is a planning technicality. So that would be dealt with as part of the planning process.
Is it on the same point, George? Is it? No, I've got you then. Craig?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Really, it's just a continuation of Councillor Maitland's question, and that was partly my point as well. Because I know that as a council, we don't really have any jurisdiction over community councils. When it comes to appeal cases or anything from community councils, we don't have any jurisdiction up to that, and it's up to themselves to make those decisions and come to their own conclusions. But as we're putting this in as guidance, I suppose, at this time, and we're putting this into the scheme as a guidance, and it does concern me as well that the same point as Jane made, if they're not statutory consultees, and the consequences on planning applications that come through, and therefore consignments of that from the planning committee themselves when an issue may be raised from that perspective. And because we don't have the legislation over them, we're removing that statutory right of the community councils. And I just like to keep myself clear on what that would actually mean to the community councils. I mean, they don't have to take this advice from us, do they? Because we don't have any statutory legislative guidance over them. And it's just the effect of how that would work on community councils. And with them not being a statutory consultee as we're proposing, does that mean, therefore, we do not send out the communication on these issues to the community councils, and they would have to find out that information themselves?
I'm afraid in terms of planning processes, that's out with my knowledge, but I would be happy to liaise with planning colleagues to ensure that members have that an answer to that question.
Just for clarity, we are saying that we do not have any jurisdiction over community councils, and it would be their decision from this to take this forward, whether to accept this advice in this report or not.
Yeah, I think, is that right, Colin? I think that's right, yeah, apart from their statutory consultees in the planning. Yeah. Ian?
Thank you, thank you, Leader. It's with regard to paragraph 3.3, where 6 community councils have asked their numbers to be reduced. The top of the next page has Beeswing. Beeswing was dissolved last year, so it should not be there as an active community council.
Thanks for that. George?
Thanks, Leader. I wonder if Colin could maybe go back to 2.1 and what has happened in there exactly about the boundary maps with these community councils, because I mean, both Finlay and I have attended the community councils in these areas, and they've all agreed to what's happened. I mean, this has been ongoing for about 5 or 6 years now, since Parton actually declared UDI again Corsic and Kirkpatrick Durham, and decided to go their own way. So this has been ongoing for a long, long time, and as far as they're concerned, everything's done and dusted, but you're now saying no.
We've had a query from a member of another community council regarding whether the changes to the boundary maps were included in the public consultation. The changes to the boundary maps were in the report to full council in June last year, and thereafter colleagues consulted with the community councils that were directly involved by the change, which was to an unpopulated area at the confluence of those three community councils. However, technically, those maps weren't included in the scheme of in the schedule of changes that were proposed, and therefore, technically, we've not complied with the requirement to publicly consult on those changes. So, whilst I appreciate that community councils involved have agreed those changes and are quite happy with them, because of the query that's been raised, we're unfortunately bound by the process.
Alistair?
Thanks, Leader. It's really a question, paragraph 3.5, sir, you know, the reference to legal advice on a specific issue having been sought. That is not yet to hand, I think I'm correct in saying, Leader.
That's correct. I do anticipate having it by the end of next week.
As a supplementary to that, Leader, if I may, can we have the issue reported, or will there be arrangements made for reporting back, you know, the tenor and the outcome of that advice, sir? Thank you.
Jill?
Thank you, Leader. I have some quite major concerns about the fact that community councils are handing out money at the moment from wind farm development funding that they've got, in particular Glencairn, which is mentioned here. They obviously haven't signed their constitution. They've got a star against their name. Not sure why that is, but it means they have now. Because they actually handed out money the other day. I've had complaints about that from some people who were not recipients of some of that money. And you're suggesting here in 3.5 that they should not be dispersing any monies until they seek legal advice. And I just want to know what the position is, because I attend numerous community councils, asked to everybody in this chamber, and a number of them are actually handing out money. And I mean, are they aware of the fact that if they do disperse money, that there might be a legal situation for an individual member?
I think it's my understanding, I'll let Colin come in, but it's my understanding that yes, we can give them advice on that and we can say you shouldn't hand out, but we don't have any legal right to enforce that. So they then take on that responsibility as a community council themselves. I'll let Colin come in,
Yeah,
I may be wrong.
But just on that as well, has each individual member of any community council been given that information, or has that information only been sent to a secretary of a community council? Because I think it's important that every member of the community councils understand what their liabilities may be.
My understanding is that in terms of responsibilities and liabilities, that should be included in the training that is provided to community councillors, or at least offered to them. In terms of information that community councils disperse within themselves, that's obviously not something that we've got control over. The issue of good governance and community councils giving out grants, etc., is one that we're aware of, and certainly it would be my intention that that's included in changes to the scheme that we would go out to consultation on as a result of, should members be minded, recommendation 2.3, to clarify the guidance that is provided to community councils. I think the issue of wind farm monies means that community councils have far larger pots of potential grants to disperse than perhaps has been the case in the past, and it certainly is an issue that we're aware of.
John?
I'm not sure that answers my question. It clearly says at 3.5, it also offers recommendations to these community councils that they do not disperse any monies until legal advice on the matter of dissolution has been received. And the answer I've just had back from you is that they don't know that. Community council members do not know that. That's what you've just told me.
Sorry, I should have said I agreed with leaders' comments that we can't enforce anything with community councils, but certainly as a result of members, if they agree what's in the report, we would intend to write to each individual community council, just reiterating the information that's in this report.
But did you not? You've already agreed this, have you not? You agreed part of this last month, but yet no information's been given to community councillors. I'm just concerned that community councillors have been making some decisions that they may not be aware that because they haven't signed up to the Constitution in the time period, that they may have a financial liability for any money they've dispersed. And I think it's important that they actually know that they have got a responsibility. Or they may have. Or at least they can make the decision as to whether or not they want to take the advice. Currently, they don't know.
I mean, yeah, I mean, I suppose it is a kind of, you know, but legally, we can, you know, we can give them advice, but we can't. Now what you're saying is, where do we stop giving that advice? We are providing that advice to them, but if, you know, if they don't know, I suppose that's what you're saying, that is an advice, but it's not. We can't say to them, no, don't do that. We give you advice not to do it, or until things are clarified. No. I'll get Ivor first.
Chair, but according to our rules that we set up as a council, they don't exist. Therefore, they should be told. That's me. That's my Scots language, sorry. They should be told that they don't exist, therefore they shouldn't be spending monies. Because it quite clearly says, you shall be dissolved, or as whatever they say.
We can tell them that, but legally they don't have to.
Is that, well then there's no problem. Then there's no problem. So why have we got this in front of us? Because we shouldn't be setting a scheme up. If we can't determine anything from the scheme doesn't exist. We can't enforce constitutions. Let them get on with it.
So, Ivor, I think you're right in some ways that we can say that, but whether we can say that, but I don't think we can enforce that. Colin.
Thank you, Leader. If I would just say the issue of whether or not the community councils need to be resolved is the issue that we've sought legal advice on, and as Head of Legal has already advised, we're expecting to receive that within the next week or so. So we'll take relevant action off the back of that advice.
Okay, Jim.
Thanks, Leader. Are community councils compelled to accept the constitution stated in the scheme, or do they have the right to adopt their own constitution?
As things stand, the scheme requires them to accept the template constitution which members agree under the scheme of establishment for the establishment of community councils. They're able to make amendments to that in terms of additional clauses to the constitution, but they have to accept, or they have to adopt the template constitution that is provided in terms of the main terms and good governance therein.
Alistair.
Thanks very much indeed, Leader. I go back to the issue of paragraph 3.5. I share colleagues' concerns, sir, and I personally feel that once we get the legal advice which has been alluded to in that paragraph, we should write in appropriate terms to those community councils, pointing out the risks that they may very well be running. As far as I'm concerned, Leader, I did take up with the Cree Valley Community Council at one of their meetings a couple of months ago the fact that, in my view, they had a limited period of time, as it were, to adopt the Constitution, the revised Constitution. I wasn't thank it particularly for my comment. The attitude was that they had consulted with someone in the council, they had been given dispensation, for want of a better term, by virtue of their involvement in mitigating the impacts of flooding in Newton Stewart. Now, their work involved in that regard was commendable, but I would have thought at the end of the day they were still obliged to make sure, in fact, that they approved the Constitution in accordance with our requirements. And I think, it's imperative that once we get the legal advice, Leader, we'll write in appropriate terms to these community councils, not being dictatorial, but trying to be helpful, because there is a very real worry that organisations, essentially, they're unincorporated organisations who are now adjudicating and inviting and adjudicating in applications to disburse community benefit from wind farms. And that can be a potential worry.
I think you're absolutely right, Alistair, and we won't do that. I think, sometimes the council's trying to be too helpful to some people, but you know, some organisations. And that's all we're trying to do. Yeah, try to be helpful. But anyway, Tom.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Leader, I mean, this was discussed at the CCS committee, and I think the important point was there's obviously statute covers community councils. What we did when we adopted this new plan for community councils, everybody sitting around this table, put in the thing about the 3-month rule. It's not a statutory duty. There's no other set of rules across Scotland. It says community councils must register their constitutions within 3 months. For whatever reason, this council decided to put that in. We're the ones who made that decision, and we're the ones who are now trying to retrieve it. And that is a simple fact of the matter. Now, at the end of the day, we could dissolve all these community councils. The expense of that, of advertising every newspaper across this region, of then having to set up community council elections when in the main it'd be totally unnecessary, is a horrendous thought. Now, what we're trying to do here is solve a problem that we created. We go back out to consultation, we got the consultation back in, hopefully for the June meeting, and we can then amend our scheme. And why we ever put in this 3-month thing, I have no idea whatsoever, because it's not part of the statute that was handed down from the Scottish Government. So I would suggest let's go on with this and get the community councils up and running again without incurring any more unnecessary expenditure.
Okay. Stephen?
Thank you. It's just on the special case of Lockerbie Community Council, which had to go to a second call for nominations, which obviously pushed back, I suppose, the 3-month window in which they would sign their constitution. So it's just to confirm, obviously in 3.5 it specifically refers to the 22nd of January, and obviously there's a special case with the Lockerbie one because there was a second call which should affect, there would be a public notice. So is it 3 months from the public notice of when the re-establishment occurred? And just, you know, so just to clarify, they would be classed as a statutory consultee now that they've signed their constitution within 3 months of the public notice.
Thank you, Leader. Just to confirm, if it's the 3 months from the date of election, so if their election was delayed for the second call, as you've pointed out, and they've subsequently adopted their constitution within that 3-month window, then yes, they should be still treated as statutory consultees.
Sorry, Dennis.
Thanks, Leader. I mean, my problem is that what we're going to do in the meantime, we've got 3 months to reconsult, but community councils are now unaware of this in distributing money. And that obviously is wrong. Therefore, can we actually advise the community councils that are in the list that there may be an issue, may be a problem, and they should be very careful about distributing the money. Otherwise, as I say, it's going to get a bigger mess.
Okay, I think we can do that. Yep.
Leader, I'm a bit concerned that we're getting focused on this wind farm money, because whoever, it could be a normal local community group that can distribute this money. It's got nothing to do with community council other than they are the group that's distributing the money for the wind farm side of things. When I read this, I thought the money was the administration money that we as a council actually give to them, not the wind farm money, because any local community group could go to a wind farm and say, I want to be the administrator of that wind farm money. So it's nothing to do with the local community council, that side of things. I think there's issues there with, and I need clarity on that, because I think that that's a memorandum of understanding between the community council and the wind farm company.
Thank you, Leader. In terms of what's in the report, it specifically was about the admin grant that is given to community councils. But obviously, as other members have pointed out, members of community councils want to make sure that they're protecting their own interest and making sure they're properly constituted and they're not leaving themselves out to challenge in terms of money that's being dispersed, i.e. that they're making good and open decisions as we would require of ourselves. So quite happy that in terms of whatever we put out to community councils off the back of members' decisions today would include suitable advice, not targeting wind farm money specifically, but talking about general disbursement of funds.
Andy?
I'll let Jim go first because it's the same thing, Leader, and I'll come in after that, if it's okay.
Yeah, thanks, Andy. Thanks, Leader. If there is an agreed process between the developers in a group, whether it's a community council, whether it's a dissolved community council, or whether it's any other type of group, if the agreement is between the developer and them, they can spend the money how they want as long as the process has been adhered to. And as long as the developer now knows that they may not any longer be a community council or a dissolved community council, but if the developer is happy with that situation, there is absolutely nothing that this council has got to do with the spending of community benefit money.
Thanks very much. There's a wee thing that's actually hitting me right in the face here when you actually look at this report. If you go to page 543 and 544, it's interesting that Wigtonshire, albeit there's one late, is 100% signed up. Arndale and Esdale is only one which isn't signed up. The rest are in the middle here. And what I'm trying to work out here is why nobody else has picked this up, because that's a bigger concern for me, right? Is what kind of support are they getting and what's happening in those two areas? Is there any explanation as to why the two in the middle have got a huge non-compliance, but the other two have understood it perfectly well?
Thank you, Leader. I can't comment on the specific support that's been provided from colleagues to individual community councils across the areas, but I'm quite happy to seek assurances that or information for members as to what specifically has been done in the areas that you've highlighted, Councillor.
Can we get something back even by email on that, Leader, so we just to assure members what's actually happened, how this has come about? Thank you.
Okay, Patsy.
It's just about the discretionary grant that we give to community councils. Are we giving that to community councils that are not properly constituted?
With the issue of under normal circumstances, we wouldn't issue the grant to community councils that aren't properly constituted. The issue of whether community councils now who didn't adopt the constitution within that 3-month time window should be considered as properly constituted is one that's only just recently come to light, and hence the discussions about seeking legal advice as to what we therefore need to do off the back of that. But in the normal course of things, we wouldn't be giving grants to the community councils if they're not properly constituted.
So have you given grants to community councils that are not properly constituted?
I don't have a list of which community councils have had grants since the last election, but I'm quite happy to supply that information.
Dennis?
Well, I think on the back of that, Chair, I think it's imperative that we actually clarify the whole situation from our point of view with those community councils that are in the list. Because if we're confused, then they've got to be even worse confused.
Okay, members, can we go to the recommendations?
Leader, just to clarify, that would mean that we score at 2.1 and 2.2 becomes 2.1 and 2.3 becomes 2.2. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, can we agree the recommendations? Item 12, Treasury Management Strategy and Prudential Indicators. This report provides members with details of the Treasury Management Strategy for the upcoming financial year and the prudential indicators supporting the Council's agreed capital investment strategy. Paul's here to answer any questions. Members? Ian?
Thanks, Chair. No problem at all with the recommendations. Department is well run as it always has been. And can I just ask my long-standing question on an update on succession management, please?
Yes, you've got an item on the next item on the agenda on reshaping the council, and as part of that, we've taken into consideration the need for succession plan, a range of areas, including Treasury management, and within finance and procurement, one of the 4 senior managers going forward will cover Treasury and capital accounting, and we're looking to ensure that we have appropriate succession plan as part of establishing those arrangements.
Alistair?
Thanks, Leader. I'm looking at the annex to Appendix 1 on page 551 and the ratio of financing costs to net revenue stream, which is going to be rising, understandably so, because we have some big capital projects. Is this predicated on the assumption that interest rates will remain basically as they are?
No, it takes into account our projections of how interest rates are likely to move over the upcoming period, and that's reflected in the report, so it takes that fully into account.
So you've factored in the possibility that there will be a rise in interest rates, which I presume wouldn't be very big, but it's bound to come eventually. Thank you.
Okay, no other members. Go to recommendations. Can agree 1, 2, note 3 and 4. Thank you. (13), which is the shape of the council. This report provides information on the progress in taking forward the actions agreed by full council for developing the shape of the council. This council asked the Chief Executive to work as quickly as possible to make progress across the home programme of transformation, and I'm pleased to see further substantial progress highlighted in the shape of the council programme and the work that has been done to deliver on service reviews, which are all crucial for our council. The Chief Executive and Directors are available to clarify. Jim?
Yeah, thanks, Leader. It's the details that are on 3.7 where it gives the due date by which they're going to actually be up and operating. And specifically EEI, it says by March 2016. However, 3.8 says that they've been slightly delayed, and then 319 says that the commenced matching recruitment process during April. When's our new date for EEI actually to be up and running as the new service?
Thank you, Leader. The date that we are targeting is the 1st of June, before the summer, yes.
Other members? Okay, got the recommendations. Can we note 1 and agree 2? Okay. Move on to item 14. This report presents the findings from the Scrutiny and Performance Committee with recommendations following its review of commissioning for full council to consider. Members are being asked to consider the findings in the report attached in the appendix to the report, and in particular agree the recommendations set out at pages 622 to 624 of the appendix. Ivor is here, who as chair of the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, will present the report and recommendations on behalf of the committee today.
Thank you, Leader. On behalf of the Council's Scrutiny and Performance Committee, I would like to present this report arising from the scrutiny review on commissioning undertaken by the committee during the last 12 months. This is phase 2 of a comprehensive review, with phase 1 on procurement presented to and agreed by full council in February 2015. The purpose of this second phase of the review was to improve the council's commissioning arrangements, with particular reference to local private businesses and third sector organisations. From the outset of the review, it was apparent that there was a need to make a clear distinction between strategic activity, which is commissioning, and tactical, which is the procurement and contract management, and that the difference must be understood and consistently communicated to ensure a shared understanding. You will therefore see from our recommendations that to help this process, we have developed a definition of commissioning as high-level strategic planning to ensure the delivery of outcomes. By agreeing this as our definition and sharing this with our partners in all sectors, public, third, independent and private, we will ensure clarity and consistency about what we mean when we talk about commissioning. This review complements the Phase 1 procurement review, and implementing the recommendations from both of these pieces of work will support improvements in what we and how we work with partners and get best value for money. Our work also links in with the Contract Management Service Review, which was reported to the Policy and Resources Committee earlier this month, and also, elsewhere in today's agenda, the review of scheme of delegation. Taken together, these improvements will make certain that this Council will be in a better place going forward and ensure that elected members see delivery of the outcomes they set out to achieve. Our recommendations are significant and will assist our Council in getting the very best services for the people in our region. Leader.
Thank you for that, Ivor. We've got Liz Manson here as well to answer any questions. I'll open up the meeting for members. Dick.
I'd just like to second the recommendations presented by the Chairman of the Committee. Thank you.
Members? Jane?
Just a very quick one. It's Objective 6, considering what services could be commissioned externally. It's on page 623 and seems to be recommendation 12. When are we going to see that, if you see what I mean? When will that come through and be obvious?
I know this was one that caused us a little bit of an issue, but we'd asked some of the sectors to actually identify where they felt that we could look at these. We're still waiting on a response for that, but there may be other opportunities, and I'll let Liz answer that if there is.
Happy to pick that up, Chair, thank you. On page 630 of your report, that gives you a little more detail of some of the discussions that we had during the course of the review. I think the focus was very much in health and social care. Perhaps members will not be surprised to know about that. But we'd also identified, you'll see there, youth work, adult learning, community capacity and community transport. And members of the CCS committee will be aware that there's some work ongoing about commissioning for some of the services in the third sector, particularly about how they engage with us, how they're representing their minority groups.
Andy.
Thanks very much. Just to you, Leader, we've talked many times in the past in this chamber here about having one person doing all the separate functions, doing the identification and then the planning and then the commission and then the procurement and then reviewing. How did the committee take forward the potential actually to split those jobs up so that the reviewer, for example, wasn't the person who actually procured the plan or planned it in the first place? That way we would actually get a clearer idea that there was a real scrutiny of all the major procurements.
Liz, do you want to comment on that?
Yes, you'll see in the recommendations that we have identified that commissioning needs to be part of a number of people's jobs, particularly recommendation 4. So we have recognised that there is a need for formal training for managers who will be conducting these commissioning discussions. I think your point about the separation then of procurement is indeed what the review has identified, that procurement may be the end result of a commissioning work, of a piece of commissioning work. And so therefore it is separate at the moment. There is a procurement unit that will have expertise in that particular part of the process. And in terms of contract management, again, as the chair of the committee said, you've recently had a review of contract arrangements, and that will see improved expertise for officers in that part.
Thanks very much. I'm particularly worried, through you, Ronnie, Liz, that it's the people who do the planning and then do the review of its effectiveness can sometimes be the same person, and is that the right way to do it, is the question I'm asking, or should those two roles be separated out so that the one person doesn't plan it and then review to make sure it was okay? Because that's the major worry I have about the process.
The arrangements that we've identified here is that they would be separate, there would be different arrangements, and I think perhaps just worth highlighting that the role of elected members again is something that we've seen. There needs to be a different way of elected members monitoring it and seeing the results of the commissions that you put in place, and that your standing orders have given an enforced role to the Policy and Resources Committee to do that.
Stephen.
Thank you, Leader. It's just when you were speaking about Objective 6, in terms of things that, well, just about commissioning, but I'm just curious whether a thing at Annandale and Eskdale Area Committee yesterday, just on the third sector, and one of the things I'm interested in is I suppose the commissioning of the Community Learning and Development Plan that we are the lead authority in terms of putting together. So I suppose, would that be an example of something where at a high level commissioning would be ensuring the delivery of the CLD outcomes, as it were, and would that be, what would be the relationship between that and, for example, the Community Planning Partnership? Because we obviously have a service within our council, and it's really just to understand that better in terms of how that would work with commissioning in future.
The particular issue of the CLD Partner Strategic Plan, there may be elements of that that the Council would wish to commission other partners in the third or private sector to do, and that would be part of an ongoing discussion. It would be unlikely, I think, that it was the whole plan that would be commissioned, but these are the kinds of discussions that we would have with partners on an ongoing basis. The relationship with other partners, we could do commissions with other partners, and indeed the recent service review about empowering communities suggests that we do want to do more in partnership, and again that's all part of the discussion that's going to take place over the coming months.
Okay, can we go to the recommendations? Can we agree? Okay, thank you. And can I just thank the Scrutiny and Performance Committee, what is a thorough piece of work and some very helpful recommendations. Okay. Right. Moving on to item 15, noting. Audit risk management, 28th of January.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
DG First Management, 12th of November.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
Education, 21st of January 2016.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
Employment Appeals, 26th of February 2016.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
Licensing Panel, 1st of December.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
3rd of December.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
5th of January.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
2nd of February.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
17th of February.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
1st of March.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
And the Local Review Body, 4th of February 2016.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Thank you. I have no other business. What? Oh, sorry. Right. Thanks for that. Pension Sub, 18th of February.
Happy to move.
You, Tom. You, Ted. No.
Happy to second.
Plan applications, 23rd of February.
Happy to move. Happy to second.
Police Fire and Rescue Sub, 10th of December.
Happy to move.
Happy to second.
Can I finish? Thank you. No other business? Thank you very much.
That's why I've got a new voting sheet this time. I just forgot to turn the page.